to demonstrate a variation of the reformer footwork using a Theraband. And in this video, I'm actually going to do three things. I'm going to do a quick demo of what the original footwork exercise looks like. I'm going to go through a couple of variations for setting up the variation using Theraband on the mat, and then I will show you the exercise. So the reason I am showing the original exercise is because a lot of people I work with are really new to Pilates. They don't know the system, and so I'm a big fan of variations, and I want you to understand the larger context from which the variation comes. So, traditional reformer footwork in the classical system, we do this at the start of every workout. We start heels together, toes apart, toes on the foot bar. Whether your heels are low or high, there are a lot of variations. I'm going to keep mine high. I just go in and out. We usually do this for 10 rounds. We move to the arches. You wrap your arches around the bar. You try to curl your heels and toes all the way around and keep that curl as you go out and in. Super hard for those of us with tight ankles. Then onto the heels, same thing. Really trying to flex from the ankle. Flex your feet back toward your knee, but have that come from the ankle. And then we finish with tendon stretch. This can be parallel or turned out, depends on your system. You slide out once, you lower and lift, and lower and lift, and lower and lift. Then again, we usually do 10 of these, bring it down. And of course, there are many variations on the reformer itself. Some people teach an additional exercise called pelvic lift. Some people do one leg versions. So there are a lot of options. So to do the Theraband version on the mat, there are lots of strengths of Therabands. This one is fairly light, and you don't have to use a name brand one. There are many options for exercise bands out there. I do like something that's kind of wide like this rather than ropey, so you can really wrap your foot around it. And since my band is super duper long, I'm gonna fold it in half. That is totally optional. It depends on the length of your arms. So, options for setting this up. I'm going to be working, my legs are going to be extended. I'm going to be working, curling, lifting, and working from in a Pilates stance. We'll use this stance for the 100, but this is footwork, not neck work. So if you are getting a lot of strain in your neck or in your upper traps, we don't want that. So, if I'm going to be working from here, but if I'm feeling a ton of strain in my neck, you can work from lowering your head to the ground. And if for whatever reason having your head flat on the ground is not ideal, I've got a nice soft foam yoga block I can use. If you have a cervical pillow or a yoga blanket that's kind of firm, just something that's going to be giving you support, but it's not too squishy. That's really what's most important. So, take my band. I'm going to curl up into my Pilates stance and then take my feet. If you're keeping your head supported, just loop the band around your feet. And I'm going to start with toes. So I'm going to take my heels together, toes apart. I'm going to have my heels lifted. And again, there are variations. That's the way we do it where I train. And I press out into the band and resist in. I press out into the band and resist in. My elbows are bent. I'm doing my best to keep my wrists straight. My elbows aren't going to quite touch the floor. That's okay. If your elbows can, go for it. And we do 10 of these. I've been talking rather than counting, but I think that's 10. And then bring the band to your arches, wrap your arch around. I often get a cramp when I do this with the band. And again, you press out and come in. And really think of the press coming from the hips rather than the knees. And so it's called footwork, but we're really calling on the pelvic bowl, the hips, the inner thighs to get that work done. All right, I'm gonna do my last one. Around my heels. And notice I'm really trying to flex from my heel. Watch what happens if it's just from my toe. My foot doesn't really do anything, so I'm really thinking about flexing from my heel. Again, that's really hard for me. I did a lot of point work in ballet, so flexing my heel in the other direction is not super fun. And again, out and in. And no, it's not the same as being on a reformer because the foot bar is hard. You get sort of a massage action. But in terms of the intent of the exercise of working that whole lower chain, it gets the job done. All right, tendon stretch. I'm going to go parallel for this variation. It's pretty common to work in that slight turnout, but I think it's easier to be parallel in this variation. So I go out all the way, I lower my heels, lift, lower and lift. And this is really hard. This is actually so much harder for me with the band than with the nice solid foot bar that I can resist against. I can personally really feel how my ankles don't want to move. They're obviously moving, but especially when I've sprained twice, doesn't love it, but it's really good for it. So again, we do 10. I haven't been counting. And then you can bend your knees in. If your head's lifted, you can lower it. Take a moment. I like to, when I'm in a rest position, I like to just bend my knees, feet on the mat, and just feel. Or you could let your legs come long. I have a tight low back, so that isn't amazing for me. But just really feel what it's like in your legs, what it's like in your feet, all the way up to your hips. And again, this is great for people who wear shoes, which is all of us pretty much. Certainly most of us. That's a big one. Or just, sitting a lot, not walking around, not getting a lot of work done, like work in your feet. So I love this one, and I hope it helps you. Have a good day.